Before we begin, thank you very much to RKR1989 for becoming a patron over at patreon.com/TJOmega and helping to keep the show alive and kicking. I thank you all for your support. This has been an amazing time for this channel, and I thank all of you for the contributions and for spreading the word. I appreciate all of it. So, in this content push I have been doing, by far, and this caught me completely by surprise, the biggest video was my 10 obscure Beast Wars facts, which I didn't even know if those would be things that were common knowledge or not, or if this was just me deep diving on TF Wiki one day and just digging all this out for everyone to finally learn about. And apparently it was the latter. There was a lot of things that you said you didn't know. One of them being this guy that we're looking at again. This was the Trifid, I still don't know how to pronounce it. It's a walking plant creature, and its name became Flytrap. This was a design that was originally for the TJOmega 10th anniversary line in Japan. Unfortunately, that line did not do very well, so they scrapped any idea for making brand new toys for it. Imagine the toy line that did so poorly, or at least fell apart so quickly, that they got 2/3 of a combiner team out and then went, you know what, this isn't worth doing one more. It's not worth doing just one more toy to complete that team. No, done. So, yeah, of course, we didn't get to the point where Flytrap became a thing. We also did not get Manticon. And didn't really try very hard on that name now, did they? So Manticon, aside from just having this kind of Serpentor-esque head, very simple for a Japanese Transformer. Japanese Beast Wars toys tended to be exceptionally complicated, especially with their shell forming. This guy just plain up uses half the beast mode for his legs, and it's kind of interesting to see it so simplified compared to how they normally do things. And then there's the weird one out of the batch, which is Rage, the Jellyfish. They were thinking about doing a Jellyfish Transformer. I have no idea. I don't know I don't know how, you make a Jellyfish Transformer that's convincing. I think you just end up looking like a cheap Metroid knockoff. And why would you take a beast form like that? I mean, as it is, the water-based beast forms are already kind of limited, and now you can just kind of float there and just hope people wander by and get stung. Yeah. But those were completely unused concept arts for characters that never saw the light of day. But because the Beast Wars video did so well, I thought we would do something a little bit akin to that. I don't want to go back to the obscure fact well. We'll do that again down the line. But for now, I thought one of my favorite parts of that was that unused character concept and artwork. So let's go and take a look at a whole bunch more and just give my thoughts and opinions on them. You might have seen them, you may not have. This will be a learning experience, or it will just be me rambling. So, I will say right off the bat, most of this is going to come from a website called tfraw.com. They have very generously given me permission to use their content to show to you guys for this video, and I thank them very much for it. It's a wonderful resource for finding out a whole bunch of almost lost media of Transformers. They do a lot to preserve things like character model sheets, character concept art, and obscure commercials so that those do not get lost or forgotten. Painstaking work they go through. Check them out. Also follow them on Twitter. They post a lot of interesting stuff on Twitter for Transformer fans. So, the one we're going to start with today is one that we talked about in the Beast Wars Facts video, and that is Tygatron, looking more akin to what you would expect here, but pay attention, we have some differences. The lower legs, for instance, are different than Cheetor's, as are the arms. They are completely new molds. Originally, Tygatron and Cheetor were supposed to be much more extensively remolded from each other so you could tell them apart better, or just so they could be more distinct from each other. Ultimately, they went with a more generic cat mold that they could somewhat work into a super buff cheetah and a kind of scrawny tiger, just because, toy production, costs, etc. But Tygatron, of course, was supposed to be a very different design. That said, Cheetor's design was originally very different than even that. So we see the familiar head sculpts, including the beast head and the mutant head. We see the gut gun looking like twice as disgusting as usual, and the familiar design aspects of Cheetor. But what we also notice is a lot of black fur and a completely different head that is definitely not a cheetah. If we look at the beast mode, and also we also note the original gun was supposed to be just the tail, not like the entire like butt section of the beast. But if we look at the beast mode, that is not Cheetor. That is absolutely not Cheetor. This is a cougar or some kind of dark-furred predatory cat. Is even kind of vaguely cat design in the first place. Yeah, this is a very different take. And this was somewhere in the earlier design sketches. So the presumption here is that someone at Hasbro or Takara kind of had like poke someone on the shoulder and go, you know, yellow is the traditional kid appeal color. It's done really well for us in the past. Why not make him a yellow cat? Why not make him a cheetah? So, of course, this design went by the wayside, and we got Cheetor instead. The irony here is that aside from all these different apparent remolds or different takes on that cheetah mold, it wasn't even the end of it. And unfortunately, these are super tiny. Super tiny. I'm going to blow them up just so you can maybe get a better shot of it. But they were apparently going to redo that mold again as a different character. And this time it was going to be a lion. So imagine this, that they decided to get one mold that was going to be a cheetah, a cougar, a tiger, and a lion. Trying to cover all those predatory cats in one mold. Now, obviously, like that's Hasbro, that's Takara, that's the makings of, you know, typical toy industry stuff. Get as many uses out of it as you can. But those animals are nowhere near alike if you actually look at them, especially if you compare like a lion and a cheetah. Interesting though. Interesting that they tried. So let's move over to TF Raw, and we're going to look at some production artwork for Beast Wars toys. And it's going to start with familiar stuff. This is Optimus Primal. His mutant head is currently applied, but we see the traditional Optimus Prime head looking much more like the original Optimus. As we remember, the original concept for Beast Wars was to use the original G1 characters. They were just in new alternate animal forms rather than the traditional trucks and guns and all that. So this looks a little bit more like that original concept. He looks more like his traditional self. If we move over a little bit more, we see the design changing a little bit. The different mutant head now looking far more like Optimus, but the exposed robot mode head getting a little bit more of its own personality. And we can go a little bit farther. This is much closer to how the mutant head ended up looking. And now we see the familiar curved horns of Optimus Primal. This is where we start getting into his more distinct silhouette. The only thing missing there would be his exposed mouth. Now, this stuff, pretty normal. You know, it's Optimus Primal. He went through a few minor revisions, but for the most part, they knew exactly how he was going to go. If we look at Megatron, things are very, very different from what we were supposed to get. So, the original concept for Megatron, it seems to be that he was a smaller figure that would transform into a torso and then combine with a shell that formed the actual beast mode, a T-Rex in this case. The T-Rex turns into the body armor, Megatron turns into the core, they combine Star Saber style, and then you get Megatron. Now, to be fair, the Megatron it comes up with, I think, looks extremely cool. And if that was some kind of Beast Wars character we got at some point, I would have been all in favor of that. This design looks awesome. It is very, very weird to think that there's going to be this Pretender-esque gimmick in Beast Wars, but there you go. And strangely enough, Fun Publications hit on the same idea for explaining why their Megatron, their pre-Beast Wars Megatron toy was this huge missile truck, and then it turned it out like Megatron was actually much smaller, and it was just an armor suit that he crawled out of, and then he looked much more like he did in the first scene of Beast Wars. So interesting that we kind of hit the same ideas here, or that they, intentional or not, went back to something a little bit more toward the original concept of Megatron. And then we have the original concept for the gimmick, which was an extending neck, which looks disgusting, by the way. But yeah, that was apparently a thing too, because of course we have to figure out the gimmicks for these toys as well. This is weird. So in the bottom left corner, it's probably cut off, but take a look at this design. And do you realize who it is? Do you even, like, does this acknowledge as a Beast Wars character at all? Because you're not, because you wouldn't get it. You wouldn't guess it. This is Baboom. This is the original concept of Baboom. Not only was he done in the same style as that Megatron, a smaller figure that could ride on his, alternate beast mode, and then combine into the robot. But yeah, he looks drastically different. And like the idea that his body was supposed to become what, a dragon? Like that's a thing they were doing? If we look further, like we do have something more akin to what Baboom would turn into. So this was the beast mode that they were going for. It would have had an alternate beast mode that the mini robot could ride, and then they combine into the robot. There's a ton. I don't know how they thought that this engineering was going to be possible, because this is really extensive. This would have taken a lot. And then to also end up with a flip over missile gimmick too, they were ambitious. Of course, this is all concept stuff, just trying things out. Same as this like screeching face gimmick. They also thought, what about a chest-bursting claw? What if we just give children nightmares with things flying out of their characters' chests? I like that he's firing it on someone who's obviously a G1 robot. That's a little fun detail. But yeah, weird stuff out of Baboom of all figures. So we're going to get into transmetals here, and this is just fun, interesting stuff. So obviously, Cheetor, and this is pretty close to how he ended up looking. This one has normal hands, or at least somewhat normal hands, but beyond that, it's basically what it turned out to be. And then we see in the beast mode, okay, yeah, cybernetic, all this. We see the organic details in the exposed robot mode parts. Then we get a little bit weird because we're going to go into the gimmicks. The gimmicks, of course, this is the concept that eventually became Cheetor's, full gimmick. The final toy just ended up making panels instead of like full thruster wings like this is. I really wish this is how they turned out. But this is just, this is just what they went with. We could have had massive jetpack that looks like a actual plane combined with his back. That was on the sketch pad at some point. How about organic wings? Can we figure out how to fit organic wings into a robotic cheetah? No? Okay, how about whatever this is? This doesn't even look like a flight mode. He's got like turbines. He's got a periscope coming out of his head. I have no idea. Like apparently a submarine mode. Best I can guess. Like I don't know. How about a little bit more jetpack? I would just a jetpack. How about that? Can we do that? Still a little bit similar to what we got. What weird stuff can you come up with? Okay. How about the Michael Bay option? How about that? We just put as many guns into this cheetah as we possibly can. This went from, happy-go-lucky teenage, maximal character to twisted metal vehicle. And then there's my favorite one, my favorite concept Cheetor, which is Dragster. Looking at the concept of the cheetah, I have no idea where they thought all these parts were going to hide, but this was what they were doing. This is what they thought they were going to end up turning Cheetor into. It's kind of upsetting, because this is like way cooler than just like the flip out wings he ended up getting. We're going to move on to Optimus Primal now. And this one looks mostly like Optimus Primal, but we do notice changes here. The feet are very different, of course. We have extra panels on the forearms, much smaller profile on the wings. So this is going to look pretty much the same until we start getting into vehicles, because the Beast mode is basically how he looks in the Beast mode. You know, there's not a whole lot to it. Torso flips around, legs get stumpy. That's pretty typical. Things start changing when we get to the tank mode, where the tank mode actually has a lot more cohesion to it. I like that the front end I like that there is a front end. Let's put it that way. And it's not just like his hands out. You know, the one thing about that toy does a lot of things, but what it does not do is make convincing looking vehicles, because it just looks like his robot with a cockpit flipped out. Speaking of, the original jet mode, so much cooler. Look how cool the original jet mode was. There's no exposed robot hands. You know, there's no exposed robot chest or a beast chest. Everything looks a lot, you know, like uniform and, you know, sleek and like tucked together. This is so cool. This is so much cooler. Why didn't we get this? Why didn't someone make this? It's a little frustrating. It's a little frustrating, because it could have been so much better. Could have been so much better. This looks like a starship. This is awesome. So, let's not leave Megatron out, right? Let's go back to Megatron, because apparently Megatron was just the one they played around with the most. So, Transmetal 2, of course, he became a dragon, but the first time they sketched that out, he wasn't Transmetal. Strangely enough, he was in his original body when they concepted Megatron as a dragon. Now, I don't know the timeline for any of this. I don't know if this was an original concept for Megatron and they went down to the T-Rex, or if this is what they had in mind as like a concept for his Season 3 form. No idea. I know he's very angry in this photo. But yeah, it's interesting, because it looks like it's just started off life as a redesign of his original body, which is emphasized by the fact that the dragon they concepted is completely organic. Like, you can even see, like, at the tops of his hips, where those panels that had those like firing missiles in his original beast mode are still there. So they could have very likely just used his first beast mode and his original concept art and traced over it to come up with a concept of Megatron as a dragon. That's entirely possible. You know, these are the things a little bit harder to figure out. But it's kind of interesting, because it almost looks like they were planning to remold the original toy into a dragon and never got around to it. And it might also explain why the original why Transmetal 2 Megatron went back to the like formula of the first Megatron, whereas like Transmetal gave him like dedicated robot arms, you know, and tucked away the beast head. This went back to head is one hand, tail is the other. So that's kind of where that ended up. Let's look at Rampage. Rampage looking a lot cleaner than his actual toy. And you can see, not only is he looking a lot more slender, not only does he have a lot less shell going on, but he has a very different layout for his parts. He's got 2 crab claws on one hand acting as a massive pincer, and then 4 on the other as one huge blade. And the whole idea behind that was, instead of a tank, Rampage was going to be a helicopter, complete with a minigun on the underside. And here's the thing, I completely support this. This is absolutely ridiculous looking, and I love it. I absolutely love how absurd this is. You know, I really kind of wish this happened. Now, I don't know how you get the crab legs down to the bottom unless it's just part forming. Like, I don't know how you get to the crab from here, but this is kind of interesting. Now, the downside is, if you look at him, he would have just been like a standard crab. He's got tiny little claws. He's not the king crab with those massive pinchers that looked like they could just crush any Maximal that ended up in the middle of them. So we take some losses here. Ultimately, the tank makes more sense for him, but this would have been hilarious. We get some concept design for some of the gimmicks. This is, of course, this is Polar Claw and his little firing bat that actually came to pass, so no surprise there. Here we have some more. This is like concepting Primal's little like chest pound gimmick. It's a dial here. It turned into a lever, but yeah, this gimmick actually survived. And then, typical stuff, wing flaps and all this. That's not too terribly surprising coming up with, Beast Wars gimmicks. What gets a little bit more surprising is watching Dinobot decapitate himself. So, at one point in the design process, your Raptor toy, you were apparently going to shove his tail up his own butt, and that would cause his head to fly off. So, I don't know. I don't claim to be an expert on combat. I don't claim to be any kind of military strategist, but I do feel like if you are voluntarily launching your head off of your body, you're probably not winning a fight. I'm just going to presume that. It doesn't seem like it would be effective. Speaking of Dinobot, Beast Wars were going to have triple changing. And triple changers for this are hilarious because it's obvious that they just thought of things. They just thought of them, and they didn't really figure out exactly how the engineering of it was going to work. So the Beast mode and the original Beast mode, the Raptor, and his robot mode, they looked familiar enough. But then you look at the Snake mode, and it's literally just his robot mode's arms like squished into his torso, and his legs like pressed together. His feet are tucked together and like stuffed into his tail weapon. They're just like hanging out. It's just like a big sock. Again, I don't know how this is physically possible. Can a third party work on these? Can a third party take some of these concepts and go, maybe we can figure out how to work it? Because I would pay money for this just for the hilarity of it. Here's the even weirder one. Here's Cheetor again, but a little bit differently designed because he was also going to be a shark. So some weird cyber shark Cheetor hybrid going on here. He looks cool in all three modes, but once again, how do you get? I don't know. How do you get from Kansas to Oz? At some point, you need to follow the yellow brick road, right? So I don't know how this would have been done or how this is possible. We never really got a proper triple changer in Beast Wars of any kind. You had some vehicle-ish modes in Transmetals. You had things like Transketo, who technically had a third mode, but nothing like this. Nothing remotely like this. I really think this kind of stuff was just beyond their level of engineering in the mid-90s. You can see here, like, they wanted to do a bird mode for Primal, which is not a bad idea. I mean, he always had a flight mode, but once again, how do you get the bulk of a gorilla down into the size of an eagle? It's just, I don't know. And apparently they didn't know either, because this stuff never happened. The gun looks awesome. Why didn't we get the gun accessory? Now, here's going to be a fun one. So here we have a crab. And we're not going to tell you who the crab is yet. If you already know, don't spoil it for the others. But we see it's just kind of a basic little crab guy. Now, we do have this unusual shaped claw on this one hand. And you notice this part? You notice this strange little part between the claw and the arm? Yeah. So as it turns out, this was going to be a triple changer that went from crab to bull. He's a crab and a bull. Or an ox. I feel like this is closer to an ox, really, because the horns are not pointed forward. Let me be more correct. So, ox, water buffalo. Well, no, not water buffalo. Those are much bigger. So, okay, we're going with ox, because it's the closest I can think of. So, he's a crab and an ox, but who is he? Because we didn't have, okay, we had Rampage, but it's obviously not Rampage. And we had, and is this, I don't know, Noctoro's original concept? Longhorn's original concept? Nope. None of the above. This was Rat Trap. At some point, someone at Takara drew Rat Trap as this weird triple changer that had nothing to do with his original rat mode. You can even see the Ox's spine is right along where Rat Trap's tail would have been in his original robot mode. So, bizarre, isn't it? Now, I will say, it wouldn't be too unlikely that, simply put, they were just using existing designs to kind of draw over concepts. So they just, essentially someone at Takara would take the design of Rat Trap, head and all, and just draw over it to come up with this crab ox concept, and then present it. Maybe we can do this. I think the creepiest thing about this take on Rat Trap is the gimmick in the upper right corner, because it's apparently a light piping thing where you pull his head up and his mouth just glows red. I presume it's red because that's the color he glowed. That's the color he glowed. And even that doesn't sound right. This has me so, this concept alone is screwing with my brain just the longer I stare at it. Jeez, weird idea for Rat Trap. And then we get into what looks like Optimus Primal. He looks like Optimus Primal. There's a bat with him. I don't know what the bat's all about, but the bat's with them. But we already see there's a few weird things here. We see that he's carrying an axe. That's already odd, but the axe is obviously a tail of some kind. And if you look behind his robot mode head, he does have a little something different back there. It's not quite the normal shape. He looks very much like Optimus Primal, except he has a few different little designs to him. So, another concept for an alternate Optimus Primal toy was a lion. This was the original lion Optimus that we were going to receive. And this was we don't know where this was. We don't know if this was an alternate take, like they're going to do multiple versions of some characters, because he does have the open mouth. That's very much Optimus Primal's head. So we know this was later on in the series. This might have been a Season 2 concept before Transmetals became a thing. This might have been, maybe they were going to switch it up mid-season. There was a time where Primal and Megatron were going to have beast modes that they could switch between. The original Bat and Gator that they transformed into were going to be in the show, and they would adapt into those modes when needed or when they were useful. This might have been another take on that, where Primal just gained another beast mode in another body. But that did not come to pass, and this eventually became Lio Convoy in a very different design. It's interesting to me that between Optimus Primal in a completely new body and Cheetor in a massive retool, they just kept trying to get lion formers out and never really got it done. They did with Prowl and Magnaboss, and eventually we got Lio Convoy. But it's interesting that a lion, of course, one of the most well-known animals, especially when you're dealing with kids, took so many iterations before they actually got one out. So I think that's an interesting take to leave it on. This can go on a lot. There's a lot of unused concepts out there. There's a lot of promotional and production art that never made it to toy or cartoon. And it has some interesting insight into exactly what made these shows tick in the directions they were going in. And they present interesting what-ifs. What if we got triple changing Rat Trap as a crab and an ox? What if Cheetor just had 1 billion guns flying out of his body? And what if Optimus Primal was a lion? We'll never know, but it's interesting to think about. So hopefully this video has given you guys something to think about. And again, thank you very much to TF Raw for letting us browse around in there. Please check them out. There's a lot more stuff besides this. As for this channel, I've got to come up with more Beast Wars stuff apparently, because that's what's hot. And I'm just now noticing that there is an maximal symbol on this Primal's crotch, so now I have to leave with that mental image in my head. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.